I'm Anya Petrova, and I'm 33. In the world I grew up in, your worth was written on your business card and tallied up in your bank account. I chose a different ledger, one that measured success in passion, not profit. So when my family was organizing their yearly lavish getaway, my brother Leo sent me a text. "This trip is for winners, Anya. No room for washouts." The one detail they'd missed, however, was that the magnificent vessel they were about to board was, in fact, mine. Before I get into the moment they discovered the truth, do me a favor and drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from. Smash that like button and hit subscribe to hear more stories about reclaiming your power from a toxic family. Life as a Petrova in Chicago meant you were born with a set of expectations as tall as the Willis Tower. My parents, Elena and Dmitry Petrova, were the poster children for New Money Drive. My father had sculpted his real estate development company into a titan of the Chicago skyline, while my mother managed a vast art collection with the sharp eye of a Wall Street trader. Every family meal was a masterclass in networking, a recital of promotions, acquisitions, and social climbing. My brother Leo, older by 4 years, was the heir apparent. He was a natural, gliding from a top prep school to the University of Chicago for economics, then straight to a top-tier MBA. By 30, he was a vice president at a major investment bank, with a sleek condo overlooking Millennium Park and a German sports car. My sister Sophia, 2 years my senior, was just as flawless in her ascent. A graduate of Northwestern's law school, she married into a family of prominent judges and quickly made partner at her firm. Her holiday newsletters were a curated gallery of perfection. Her husband Mark, and their 2 impeccably dressed children. And then there was me, Anya, the odd-shaped piece in the family jigsaw. From a young age, I questioned the truths they held as self-evident. When my father would point to a sprawling mansion on the North Shore and declare it the ultimate goal, I'd ask what a family could possibly do with all that space. When my mother enrolled me in junior leagues and etiquette classes that would look good on a college resume, I just wanted to know if any of it was supposed to be fun. That Petrova dreamer gene, my grandmother used to say with a soft smile. She was the only one who saw my perspective as a curiosity, not a defect. My earliest, happiest memories were of Lake Michigan. While my siblings spent their summers in competitive internships, I pleaded to go to a sailing camp on the lake, the feeling of the wind catching the sails, the immense blue horizon. It spoke to me in a way that charity balls and country clubs never could. By 15, I could tell you the difference between a sloop and a ketch, and I followed the luxury charter industry like other kids followed sports teams. Boats are a pastime. Anya, not a profession, my father would declare with a wave of his hand anytime I brought up my fascination. Petrovas own the companies. They don't work the service jobs. The moment I was unofficially branded, the family letdown happened in my sophomore year of high school. Our school held a career day, while Leo had schmoozed with bankers and Sophia had lined up a meeting with a federal judge. I spent the entire afternoon at the booth for a luxury travel and tour company. "She's just going through a phase," my mother said to my father over dinner that night, discussing me as if I were a piece of furniture. "All teens find a way to rebel. It's better than getting a nose ring or dating a musician." I'm not rebelling. I tried to intervene. I'm genuinely interested in the hospitality industry, the logistics, the client experience, the business side of it. "That's enough, Anya," my father cut in, his voice final. "When you're paying your own way in the world, you can be fascinated by whatever you wish. Until then, you will focus on a practical, respectable future." That evening set the template for our relationship for years. My dreams were dismissed as childish whims, or worse, a deliberate act of defiance. In our house, love was conditional, and the conditions were conformity and achievement. Still, I quietly nurtured my passion, devouring trade magazines and studying the big names in luxury travel and charters. My walls were covered with pictures of stunning yachts, not pop stars. At every holiday gathering, some well-meaning aunt or uncle would inevitably ask, "And what's little Anya up to?" Still obsessed with those boats? Spoken with the same indulgent tone used for a child's imaginary friend. My cousin, David, who was working on his doctorate in finance, once gave me some pragmatic advice at a family party. Just get a respectable degree they can brag about, he said. Play the game long enough to get your financial independence. Then you can do whatever boat thing you want. But I was never good at playing games. The harder they pushed me toward their definition of success, the more I dug my heels in to create my own. When senior year came and the college application storm hit, the battle lines were officially drawn. We've scheduled alumni interviews for you at Princeton, Yale, and Columbia, my mother announced one night, as if bestowing a great gift. Your essays need some polishing, but with your grades, a strong interview should seal the deal. I've already sent my application to Cornell School of Hotel Administration, I said, my voice steady. They have one of the best hospitality management programs in the world. The silence was deafening, followed by an eruption. Words like ungrateful, foolish, and throwing it all away were fired across the dining room table. Sophia stared at her plate, a portrait of discomfort, while Leo openly took our parents' side. Why must you always be so difficult, he asked me later that night. Just get a normal business degree first. Then you can play with your weird boat hobby on the weekends. That night, I was no longer just the odd one out. I was the black sheep. I did end up compromising, attending DePaul University's business school to keep a fragile peace, but the wound was deep. I had shown them I wouldn't follow the Petrova script, and for that, I felt I would never truly be part of the family again. My freshman year at DePaul started with a relentless barrage of comparisons. My mother would offhandedly mention how Leo had been recruited into a prestigious finance club in his first semester, or how Sophia had landed a research assistant position with a top law professor. Every dinner felt like a performance review where I was being measured against the gold standard set by my siblings. A business degree is a solid foundation, at least, my father would say, a minor concession, though a law degree would have opened more doors. I went through the motions, keeping my grades up, but I poured my real energy into every elective I could find related to tourism, hospitality, and service management. When summer came, my parents assumed I would take an internship at my father's development company, just as my siblings had. Actually, I've got a summer job at the Belmont Harbor, I announced during a family brunch. They need help with guest services on the docks. The reaction was one of thinly veiled disgust. You mean you'll be a receptionist? My mother asked, her lips tight with disapproval. I'll be learning the marina business from the ground up, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. The only way to truly understand an industry is to start at the bottom. This is just embarrassing, Leo muttered under his breath. My sister, the dock girl. Their scorn didn't matter. That summer was life-changing. I soaked up every detail of marina operations, from scheduling software to client management. I took meticulous notes on inefficiencies and opportunities for improvement. The manager, a woman named Sarah, saw my drive and started giving me more responsibility. When sophomore year began, I made the choice that would define my life. 2 weeks into the semester, I officially withdrew from the university. With my savings from the summer and the tuition refund, I had just enough to get a small studio apartment and keep working at the harbor full-time. The family's reaction was nothing short of apocalyptic. My father threatened to disown me. My mother wept about the humiliation of having to explain this to her friends. Leo called me a spoiled brat who was ruining my life out of pure spite. Only Sophia showed a hint of empathy. Are you absolutely sure about this? She asked me in a rare private call. It's going to be a really tough road. I'm sure, I told her. I'd rather struggle doing something I'm passionate about than be miserable succeeding at something I hate. As promised, my parents cut off all financial support. The next few years were incredibly lean, but they were my real education. I moved from the harbor to a role at the Chicago Yacht Club, then to a junior assistant position at a small charter company. Each job added a new layer to my understanding of the business and expanded my network. To my family, I was just drifting between low-wage jobs. In reality, I was strategically building a foundation. I lived a minimalist life, putting most of what I earned into online courses on maritime business and saving every other penny. My apartment was tiny, my clothes were practical. To my status-obsessed family, this was all just further proof of my failure. The breakthrough came in my third year in the industry. I had been promoted to charter coordinator at a company called Azure Seas Charters, one of the top luxury yacht firms on the Great Lakes. The owner, Victor Sterling, was a legend in his 70s, with no heir apparent. Victor noticed my constant stream of suggestions for improving efficiency and my novel ideas for marketing. Unlike my family, he saw my passion as a powerful asset. He started inviting me to high-level meetings and asking for my opinion on major decisions. "And you've got a gut for this business, Anya," he told me after I successfully managed a particularly difficult charter for a group of demanding tech executives. "You understand that it's not just about the boats. It's about orchestrating an experience, managing personalities, and solving problems before the client even knows they exist." When Victor offered to mentor me directly, I seized the chance. For 2 years, I was his shadow. What my family didn't know during all those years they thought I was playing with boats was that I was becoming Victor Sterling's successor. When he told me he was thinking of retiring but was worried about the company's future, I took a deep breath and presented him with a comprehensive succession plan. It ended with me buying the business from him. "You want to buy me out?" he asked, his eyebrows shooting up. "Eventually, yes," I said. "I've been saving." With a structured financing plan over several years, I know I can do it. I'll protect your legacy and inject new energy to keep Azure Seas at the top of the market for the next generation. Victor took my proposal seriously. After months of talks with his lawyers and accountants, we hammered out an agreement. He would sell the company to me in stages over 5 years, while I served as chief operating officer. The deal was tied to performance metrics. The better the company did under my leadership, the more favorable the final purchase price. By the time I was 30, I was essentially running Azure Seas, though Victor remained the company's public face. Our partnership was a huge success. My new marketing strategies increased our bookings by 30%, and we expanded our core fleet from 12 to 18 vessels. Victor's faith in me had paid off handsomely for us both. Throughout this entire journey, I kept my success a secret from my family. At the rare family events I attended, I kept my answers about work vague, letting them believe I was still a junior-level employee. I knew that if I told them, they'd either be skeptical or try to take credit for it despite offering zero support. "Still working with those boats?" my father would ask at Christmas, a dismissive edge to his voice. "Yep, still in the yacht business," I'd reply, biting my tongue to keep from saying that I now owned a controlling stake in the most prestigious charter company in the region. The private knowledge was satisfying, but I had no grand plan for a dramatic reveal. That changed when Victor fully retired, transferring his remaining shares to me and making me the sole owner of Azure Seas Charters and its multi-million-dollar assets. 3 months later, my family handed me the perfect stage for a confrontation they never saw coming. The annual Petrova family vacation started when I was a teenager, supposedly a way to bond outside of our busy lives. In truth, it was another performance, a stage for displaying wealth and making connections. My parents always chose 5-star destinations, from Swiss ski resorts popular with European bankers to exclusive Caribbean islands where Dad could run into potential investors. Despite my status as the family pariah, I was always included. The invitation was a constant, though it often came with a side of lectures about how this luxury was only possible because of the practical career choices made by everyone else. This year, as my 34th birthday neared, I was actually looking forward to the trip announcement. For the first time, I could afford to enjoy it without feeling like a charity case. I even thought about subtly dropping hints about my own success, testing the waters. The news didn't come from my parents, but from Sophia. During one of our infrequent calls, she mentioned it offhandedly. Mom's been driving me nuts with questions about cruise ship cabins. She sighed, like I have time to debate the merits of a veranda suite while prepping for a major trial. A cruise? I asked, my brow furrowing. I hadn't heard a word. There was a beat of awkward silence on the other end. "Oh," Sophia said, her voice suddenly strained. "I just assumed you knew. The family trip this year is a private yacht charter along the Amalfi Coast." My stomach clenched. A yacht charter, my exact industry, and I'd been left out. "When did you guys decide on that?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice light. "There's been an email chain going around for a few weeks," she admitted. "I thought you were on it." "Hold on, let me check." I heard the soft click of a keyboard. "Oh, I see. Mom started a new email thread and didn't include you. That must have been an accident." We both knew it was no accident. After we hung up, I searched my email. I found the initial vacation email from 2 months ago. I was on that one, but I was absent from all the follow-ups. I decided to call my mother directly. "Anya, darling," she answered, her voice syrupy sweet. "What a nice surprise. I was just on the phone with the gallery. I just got off the phone with Sophia," I said, cutting to the chase. "Sounds like my invitation to the family trip got lost in the mail." A pause. "Oh, that. Well, we just figured you'd be too busy with your boat job. And besides, this is a very exclusive charter. The cost per head is significant." "I see," I replied, my voice turning to ice. "So you think I can't afford my share? Darling, it's nothing to be ashamed of. We all make our choices, and you chose a different path. This trip is just more for professionals at a certain stage in their careers. Your father is bringing some important clients. Leo is bringing 2 potential investors. It's as much about networking as it is a vacation." The message was painfully clear. I was an embarrassment. I wasn't successful enough to be seen with the glorious Petrovas and their important friends. "I understand," I said, my voice flat. "Thanks for the clarification." I hung up and stared out my office window, which overlooked the bustling Chicago River, a view I had earned. The irony was suffocating. I was about to text Sophia to ask which company they'd booked with when a new message from Leo flashed on my screen. "Heard you called Mom about the trip. A little advice. Stop trying to guilt your way onto a vacation you can't afford. This trip is for winners, Anya. No room for washouts. Maybe next year if you get a real job." I stared at his words, my hands trembling with a mix of fury and deep hurt. After all my hard work, after everything I had built while they looked down on me, this is what they still thought of me. A failure, a washout. Taking a slow, deep breath, I opened my company's international booking software and searched for the name Petrova. And there it was. A 7-day charter of our newest, most luxurious ocean vessel, the Serafina, departing from Naples in 3 weeks. The booking was made through a third-party luxury travel agent, which is why my staff hadn't flagged the name. The price they were paying made my eyebrows lift. They had spared no expense. The vessel was our crown jewel, a 130-foot motor yacht with 6 palatial staterooms, a crew of 8, and every conceivable luxury. The charter confirmation listed Captain Miller as the skipper. Miller had been with Azure Seas for 5 years. He was my most experienced and trusted captain. A plan began to crystallize in my mind. I picked up my phone and dialed his direct line. "Miller, it's Anya. Are you in the office? I need to talk to you about your upcoming charter out of Naples." As I hung up, a sense of calm washed over me. For years, I had let them believe their own narrative about my life. It was time for the truth. Not for revenge, but because hiding my success was starting to feel more poisonous than any confrontation. I pulled up the passenger manifest. In addition to my family, there were 3 of my father's business partners and their wives, 2 potential investors for Leo, and a senior partner from Sophia's law firm that she and Mark were trying to impress. Every guest was a strategic move, a vacation that was really a business conference at sea. How perfect. Their exclusive networking event was about to get a keynote speaker they hadn't planned on. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes landing on a scale model of the Serafina on my bookshelf. A small, determined smile touched my lips. In 3 weeks, the Petrovas were going to get a master class in what success really looked like. The days after I discovered my family's deliberate exclusion were a whirlwind of emotion. The initial sting of rejection gave way to a steely resolve, an opportunity I hadn't sought but now couldn't ignore. I debated my options, oscillating between calling them out over the phone and the far more dramatic plan that was taking shape. I needed a sane person's perspective, so I called my best friend Chloe for lunch. Chloe had been my only real friend from my short time at DePaul, the one who stuck by me when I dropped out. She came from a family of small business owners and understood the grit it took to build something from scratch, and the prejudice you faced when your path wasn't paved with Ivy League degrees. "They did what?" she gasped, nearly spitting out her iced tea after I laid out the situation. "And your brother actually sent that in a text? After all your work?" "To be fair," I reminded her, pushing a piece of lettuce around my plate, "they have no clue what I've done. And that's partially on me. I never set them straight." "No, Anya, don't you dare," Chloe said, her voice firm. "You kept quiet because they created an environment where your success would never be celebrated. They never once showed genuine curiosity about your life. That's their failing, not yours." "Maybe," I admitted. "But what now? Do I let them have their winners-only vacation? Or do I show up and finally show them who I am?" Chloe thought for a moment, twisting a lock of her dark hair. "What's your goal here? Are you looking for an apology or revenge? Because those are two very different paths." Her question stopped me. What did I really want? The image of their jaws dropping was certainly tempting, but I wasn't a vindictive person. "I want acknowledgement," I said, the answer becoming clear as I spoke it. Not an apology, not even praise, just for them to see that my path was valid, that success isn't one size fits all, that they were wrong about me. "Then I think you have your answer," Chloe said. "But do it for you, Anya, not for them." That evening, from my apartment balcony, I watched the tour boats on the Chicago River. I thought about the years of being the family disappointment, of the conditional love that always felt just beyond my grasp. I thought about Victor Sterling, who saw potential in me when my own blood relatives saw none. And I thought about the company I had built, the respect I had earned in an industry I loved. My decision was made. The next morning, I called Captain Miller into my office. Miller was a man in his late 50s, a former Coast Guard officer with kind eyes and the quiet competence of someone who had weathered countless storms. "I need to talk about the Petrova Charter," I began, then paused, unsure how to broach the delicate subject. "They're your family, aren't they?" Miller said with a knowing glance. "Stella in bookings made the connection but wasn't sure if you were aware." "They are," I confirmed, "but they don't know I own the company. In fact, they think I'm a total failure. They specifically left me out of this trip because I'm not successful enough to be in their company." Miller's eyebrows rose a fraction, but his professional mask didn't slip. "That is an unusual set of circumstances. How would you like us to proceed, Miss Petrova?" I outlined my plan. I would fly to Naples a day early and be on the yacht when they arrived. Miller would greet them as planned, and then, at the right moment, he would introduce me, not as a stray family member, but as the owner of Azure Seas Charters. "The point is to reveal myself as their host," I explained, "not to crash their party. This needs to be done with absolute professionalism. No drama, just a clear statement of fact." Miller nodded thoughtfully. "We can facilitate that, Miss Petrova. The crew will be briefed on the need for discretion. Will you be taking the owner's suite?" "No," I decided immediately. "Prepare it for my parents as planned. I'll take one of the other staterooms. This isn't about upstaging them. It's about honesty." In the 2 weeks that followed, I made my arrangements. I put my second in command, a sharp woman named Natalie, in charge of stateside operations. I had a portfolio prepared for Captain Miller with documents confirming my ownership, just in case they accused me of fabricating the story. I picked out my wardrobe with care, professional, chic, and understated. I wanted to look successful, not like I was rubbing their noses in it. The night before I flew to Naples, a wave of doubt hit me. Was this a huge mistake? Was I about to blow up my family for good? I called Chloe in a panic. I keep thinking I should just cancel, I confessed. Maybe showing up like this is just petty. Anya, listen, she said sternly. Standing up for yourself is never petty. You're not plotting some evil scheme. You are simply choosing to no longer hide who you are to make them comfortable. That's growth, not pettiness. She was right. The next morning, I boarded my flight to Naples with a renewed sense of purpose. The long flight gave me time to mentally prepare, to walk through the potential reactions and my responses. By the time I landed, I was exhausted but resolute. I spent one night in a hotel, allowing myself to recover from the jet lag before the storm. The next morning, a car took me to the marina where the Serafina was docked, her white hull gleaming against the blue of the Tyrrhenian Sea. Captain Miller met me at the gangway. Everything is ready, Miss Petrova. Your family is due to arrive at 2 o'clock. I stepped aboard the vessel that was the culmination of my life's work. I ran my hand over the polished teak railing, a quiet thrill running through me. I held a brief, discreet meeting with the crew. Thank you all for your professionalism today, I said. This is a personal matter, and I appreciate your discretion. With hours to spare, I went to my stateroom. I changed into a simple but elegant linen dress. I wanted to look poised and in control. As the time drew near, I found a spot on the upper deck, partially hidden but with a clear view of the dock. My heart hammered against my ribs as I saw them, a cluster of immaculately dressed people striding confidently toward the marina. The moment of truth was here. From my perch on the sun deck, I watched the Petrova clan arrive. My father led the charge, exuding an air of ownership even before he'd stepped on board. My mother was beside him, fanning herself with a brochure, her expression already critical. Behind them, Leo was in full networking mode, laughing loudly with two men who were clearly his target investors. Sophia and her husband Mark trailed behind, trying to manage their two children who were, despite the Italian heat, dressed in pristine, matching outfits. The dockhands rushed to take their bags, and I saw Leo give a dismissive wave to the young man who took his oversized suitcase. My father handed out tips with a performative flourish, ensuring everyone saw his generosity. "This is the vessel, Mr. Petrova," the marina coordinator said, gesturing toward the Serafina. "Captain Miller is waiting for you." "Magnificent," my father declared, his voice booming. "Just what one would expect for this price point." My mother squinted at the yacht. "I certainly hope the interior is as nice as the photos. You never know with these charter companies." I had to smother a laugh. I had personally overseen the last refit. Our vessels always looked better in person. That was company policy. Captain Miller appeared at the top of the gangway, his white uniform crisp, his posture impeccable. "Mr. and Mrs. Petrova, welcome aboard the Serafina. It is an honor to have you with us." "Thank you, Captain," my father replied, using the patronizing tone he reserved for service staff. "I trust everything is in order. We expect a flawless journey." "Of course, sir. The Serafina is the pride of our fleet," Miller said smoothly. "If you'll all please come aboard, we can begin the welcome orientation." They filed onto the yacht, their guests oohing and aahing appropriately. Once they were all gathered on the main aft deck, Captain Miller began his standard safety briefing. "Before we show you to your staterooms," he concluded, his voice calm and steady, "I should mention a special circumstance for this charter. The owner of Azure Seas Charters happens to be in Naples and has joined us for your departure today." "The owner?" My father's interest was instantly piqued. "Well, that's a nice touch. Always good to meet a fellow entrepreneur." "Indeed," Leo chimed in, adjusting his tie. One never knows where the next opportunity will come from. I would be delighted to introduce you, Miller replied. Ms. Petrova, would you care to join us? I took a steadying breath and walked down the spiral staircase from the upper deck, stepping into their full view. There was a moment of stunned silence, a collective brain freeze as they tried to place me in this context. Then recognition flickered across their faces. Anya, my mother said, her voice a mix of confusion and irritation. What on earth are you doing here? Before I could speak, Captain Miller delivered the final line with perfect timing. Allow me to introduce Ms. Anya Petrova, the owner and CEO of Azure Seas Charters. Welcome aboard your yacht, Ms. Petrova. The silence that fell was absolute. My father's jaw literally dropped. He looked from me to the captain and back again. There must be some mistake, Captain, he finally sputtered, managing a weak, disbelieving laugh. Anya works for a boat company. She certainly doesn't own one. There is no mistake, sir, Miller said, his voice firm but respectful. Ms. Petrova has been the sole owner of Azure Seas for nearly a year. She served as COO for 2 years prior to that. This is ridiculous, Leo interjected, his face flushing with anger. This has to be some kind of prank. She put you up to this, didn't she? I finally found my voice, keeping it calm and even. It's not a prank, Leo. I've spent the last decade building a career in this industry, while all of you just assumed I was... What was your term? A washout. But you never told us, my mother accused, her shock turning to indignation. You lied to us. Did I asked gently. Or did you just never ask? When was the last time any of you showed the slightest real interest in my work, other than to dismiss it? Sophia, always the most observant, was studying my face. You're serious, she whispered. You actually own this entire company. There was awe in her voice, not the derision of my parents or brother. I do, I confirmed. I started at the very bottom. The previous owner, Victor Sterling, took me under his wing, and eventually I bought him out. Leo scoffed. Right. And I'm the Pope. Anya, where would you get the kind of money to buy a fleet of yachts? Captain Miller stepped forward, holding a leather-bound portfolio. Perhaps this will provide some clarification, he said, handing it to my father. Inside were the corporate registration documents, press releases about my acquisition, and several articles from luxury travel magazines profiling me as a rising star in the industry. My father's hands shook slightly as he flipped through the pages, his expression shifting from disbelief to stunned comprehension. His business partners crowded around, peering over his shoulder, their expressions turning to ones of clear admiration. One of them, a man named Arthur, looked at me with new respect. Azure Seas Holdings, LLC, he read from a document. You created your own holding company for the acquisition. Yes, I confirmed. It was the most efficient way to manage the initial purchase and structure the financing for our subsequent expansion. Expansion? My father echoed, his voice thin. We've added 6 new vessels to the fleet in the past 3 years, I explained, the familiar rhythm of a business presentation grounding me. And we've opened new charter bases in the Caribbean. Revenue is up 45% under my leadership. The business associates were now looking at me with undisguised respect. My family, however, looked like they'd been struck by lightning. My mother's mind was visibly working, her eyes darting from me to the luxurious surroundings, recalibrating her entire understanding of her daughter. Well, she finally said, a strained smile on her face, this is quite a surprise. You should have told us, Anya. We have always supported your passions. The sheer audacity of her attempt to rewrite history was almost comical. Have you? I asked quietly, because I seem to recall being told I wasn't welcome on this trip. I believe the exact words were, no room for washouts. Leo went pale, the investors he'd brought along now giving him a distinctly cool look. That was just a joke, he mumbled. I didn't have all the facts. Obviously, I agreed. Now the crew is ready to show you to your staterooms. We can get underway on schedule. Unless, of course, my presence here makes anyone uncomfortable. This is, after all, supposed to be your exclusive vacation." The barb hit its mark. My father, ever the pragmatist, immediately went into damage control. "Nonsense," he boomed with forced cheer. "A wonderful surprise. Our daughter, the successful CEO. Of course, we want you to join us." The others murmured their agreement, but the air remained thick, with a tension you could cut with a knife. As Captain Miller directed the guests toward their rooms, Sophia hung back. "You actually did it," she said, her eyes wide. "You built all of this on your own terms." "I did," I said, "and I'm proud of it, even if it's not a Petrova-approved career path." Sophia glanced toward the others, then back at me. I wish I'd known. For all these years, we just thought. "I know what you thought," I finished for her, my tone softening. "That's why I'm here." She nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For leaving you out. For never really seeing you." It was a small gesture, but it felt like the first genuine crack in the wall that had stood between us for a decade. As we turned to follow the others into the yacht's magnificent interior, I felt a flicker of hope. The next 7 days would reveal if the Petrova family was capable of learning a new story, one where success was defined by more than just their narrow, gilded rulebook. The first night on the Serafina was a masterclass in awkwardness. Dinner was served on the aft deck as the sun set over the Bay of Naples, a breathtaking scene that was largely lost on my shell-shocked family. The chef I'd personally hired prepared an exquisite multi-course meal, but the conversation was painfully stilted. My father, a man who always needed to be in control, tried to reclaim his authority by turning the evening into a business interrogation. "So, Anya," he began, swirling a glass of expensive wine, "tell us about the corporate structure. How many employees? What are your gross annual revenues?" He asked the questions as if grilling a junior associate, a tactic designed to both acknowledge my position and assert his own dominance. "We have 62 full-time staff and about 40 seasonal crew," I replied calmly. "As for revenue, we're a privately held company, so I don't discuss specific figures at dinner." I offered a small smile to take the edge off. "Let's just say we're a market leader in our sector." One of his partners, Arthur, leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. "That's remarkable. Did you have significant seed capital?" "I used traditional bank financing for the initial buyout phase," I explained. "Then I leveraged the company's own performance to secure better terms for the fleet expansion. Victor, the previous owner, also agreed to a buyout structure that was tied to growth, which was a huge help." As I spoke, I saw Leo growing more and more agitated. While our parents were busy recalibrating and starting to spin a new narrative of "we always believed in her," Leo was stuck. He was the one who had sent the text. "I need to make a call to the office," he announced suddenly, pushing his chair back and disappearing inside. Later, after the guests had dispersed, I found myself alone on the bow, the lights of Naples shimmering in the distance. My mother appeared beside me, a cashmere wrap draped over her shoulders. "This was all very dramatic, Anya," she said, her voice laced with that familiar tone of disapproval disguised as concern. "Was it truly necessary to ambush us like this? Would you have believed me if I had just told you?" I asked, turning to face her. She hesitated. "Perhaps not at first, but this... it feels calculated. Like leaving your own daughter out of a family vacation because you decided she was a failure?" I countered softly. My mother flinched. "That wasn't just my decision. Your father was worried about how it would look with his clients here. Because I was the family embarrassment, I finished for her." "We never used that word," she protested weakly. "Leo did," I said, in a text message. She looked away, out at the dark water. "Your brother, he's always been competitive. He didn't mean it. He meant it, Mom. You all meant it in your own ways. And that's why I never told you about my success. Every time I tried, you dismissed it or changed the subject. You never wanted to hear it." "We were worried about you," she insisted. about your future. No, I said firmly. You were worried about appearances. You were worried about what you would tell your friends at the country club. Sophia, the lawyer, Leo, the banker, and Anya, the disappointment. To my astonishment, her eyes welled up with tears. Is that truly how you feel we see you? It's how you've treated me for more than a decade, I replied, my voice softening slightly. And your actions have always told me that my worth was conditional on me fitting into your world. She was quiet for a long time. I suppose, she finally conceded, that we have not been as supportive as we could have been. Your path was just so different. Different doesn't mean less, I said. I found a career I love. I built something from the ground up, and I'm financially successful by any standard. Isn't that what you always wanted for us? Yes, but she trailed off, unable to articulate the real issue. But it wasn't law or finance or real estate. I finished for her. A tiny, sad smile touched her lips. You always did have a knack for cutting right to the heart of the matter. The conversation ended there, unresolved but open. As she walked back toward the salon, I knew this was just the beginning of many difficult conversations to come. The next morning, I was on the bridge with Captain Miller before anyone else was awake. As I turned to leave, I almost ran into my father. Up early, he commented, studying me with a new, appraising look. You get that from me. Good morning, Dad, I replied. I was just going over the day's itinerary with the captain, he said, then added a little awkwardly, though I suppose you're the one I should be talking to about that. The planned route is perfect, I assured him. I approved it myself a few months ago, before I knew who the clients were. He nodded, then gestured toward the deck. Care for a coffee? Soon we were sitting together, watching the sun climb over the Italian coast. I looked through those documents again last night, he began. It's an impressive corporate structure, very smart tax planning. Coming from him, that was the highest form of praise. Thank you, I had good advisors. Petrova Jeans, he declared, a statement of pride he'd never once applied to me. We may have been hasty in our judgment of your career choice. Hasty? I repeated. Dad, for 10 years, you've made it clear you thought I was throwing my life away. He winced. We were concerned. The hospitality industry is volatile. So are the financial markets, I pointed out. But you never questioned Leo's career. Fair point, he conceded, surprising me. I suppose we had preconceptions. Preconceptions that led you to leave me out of this trip, I reminded him. He sighed, a heavy, weary sound. That was handled poorly. Your mother wanted to include you. I was the one who was concerned about appearances. He couldn't bring himself to say he was embarrassed, but I heard it anyway. I regret that decision now, he said. It wasn't an apology, but for my father, it was monumental. The rest of the day, as we cruised toward our first island stop, a new dynamic began to emerge. That afternoon, as I was working on my laptop in the salon, Leo approached me. His usual swagger was gone. So, he started, "This is all real." "Yes, Leo, it's real." He nodded, processing. "Why didn't you say anything? All those years, you just let us think that I was a failure?" I supplied. "Maybe because every time I tried to talk about my work, you made a joke about Anya and her little boats and changed the subject. I didn't think it was a real career," he mumbled. "How was I supposed to know?" "You could have asked," I said simply. He had no answer for that, but the secrecy. It's like you wanted to trick us. "I didn't set out to keep it a secret," I explained, but after years of being judged, it just became easier to say nothing. And yes, maybe a small part of me enjoyed succeeding on my own, without your approval. "So this was all revenge?" he asked, a bitter edge to his voice. "No," I said firmly. "This was about truth. I'm not ashamed of what I've built, and I'm done pretending to be smaller than I am just to protect your ego." "My ego?" he repeated, incredulous. "Isn't it?" I challenged. "The idea that your little sister, the washout, might be more successful than you, it's threatening, isn't it?" The look on his face told me I'd hit the mark. "That's ridiculous. I'm happy for you." "Are you?" I asked, because that text message said something very different. He had the decency to look ashamed. I shouldn't have sent that. It was a stupid, childish thing to say. "It was cruel, Leo," I corrected him. "And it was honest. It showed me exactly how you see me." He ran a hand through his hair, looking lost. "I don't know what you want me to say, Anya. Okay? I was an ass. I underestimated you. Congratulations, you proved us all wrong." The bitterness was still there. We had a long way to go. That evening, I hosted a formal dinner as the owner of the vessel, a role that visibly made my father uncomfortable. As the wine flowed, one of the guests asked me about my career journey. For the first time, my entire family listened. The previous owner, Victor, taught me that true luxury isn't about gold taps and champagne, I explained. It's about anticipating a person's needs before they even know they have them. "That philosophy is evident in every detail on this yacht," one of the wives commented. "The level of service is extraordinary." "Anya was always the one who noticed things," Sophia said unexpectedly from across the table. "Even when we were kids, she remembered everyone's favorite cake and tried to make birthdays special. That small comment, that simple acknowledgement of a quality in me, meant more than any business compliment." As dessert was served, my father stood and raised his glass. "A toast," he announced, "to Anya. Her vision and determination have built something truly exceptional. It seems the Petrova spirit of excellence can thrive in unexpected places." Everyone raised their glasses. "And to family," I added, my eyes meeting each of theirs. "May we all learn to see each other for who we are, not who we expect each other to be." The toast was both a celebration and a challenge. The final morning of the cruise, I watched the sun rise over the Aegean Sea. The past 6 days had been a slow, painful dismantling of a decade of family myths. My mother had moved from defense to a tentative, confused pride. My father was now talking about my business as if he'd been its biggest champion all along. Leo kept his distance, but the arrogance was gone, replaced by a quiet introspection. Only Sophia seemed truly open, asking me thoughtful questions about my journey. As we disembarked in Athens, the goodbyes were surreal. My father gave me a stiff, awkward hug. "We'll have dinner when we're back in Chicago. I have some contacts in maritime finance you should meet." My mother kissed my cheek. "You must come over. I want to hear everything." Leo just gave me a curt nod. "It's an impressive operation, Anya. From him, that was a victory." Sophia hugged me tight. "This changes everything, you know," she whispered, "for all of us." 6 months later, we were all at my parents' house for Thanksgiving. The change was palpable. Articles about Azure Seas charters were displayed on the coffee table. My father introduced me to his friends with booming pride, and before dinner, Leo pulled me aside. "I've done a lot of thinking," he said, his voice quiet. "You were right. About everything. I was so caught up in my own definition of success that I couldn't see yours. I'm sorry, Anya, for everything I said." The apology was quiet, but it was real. Later that evening, my mother found me in my father's study. She handed me a glass of brandy. "We were so afraid for you," she said softly. "We were so afraid you would struggle that we couldn't see you were soaring." I took a sip, the warmth spreading through my chest. "I know, but in trying to protect me from failure, you almost stopped me from finding my own success. I know that now," she admitted. "The irony is, by any real measure, you're the most successful of all of us. You built something real from nothing, entirely on your own terms. The validation I had craved for so long finally washed over me, but it felt different now. It was nice to have, but I no longer needed it. My journey wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that I was right. True success, I realized, wasn't about getting their approval. It was the quiet satisfaction of building a life that was authentically mine. Looking back on that week aboard the Serafina, I knew the reveal was never about revenge. It was about claiming my own story in my own voice. The greatest measure of success isn't a title or a bank balance. It's the courage to trust your own compass and sail your own sea, even when everyone else is telling you you're headed for a storm. End of story.